The wind blew fiercely through the straw covering my body, and I could feel the scornful gazes turning into desperate pleas. There I stood, Obaluayê, the outcast, the cursed, being begged to save those who had once banished me. My hands trembled beneath the straw cloak as I observed the feverish bodies scattered across the village. This was the moment of my greatest trial, not one of power, but of forgiveness. My name is Obaluayê, and this is the story of how I learned that true healing does not come from perfection, but from the acceptance of our deepest wounds. I was born under the sign of earth and transformation, the son of Nana Baruku, the great mother of ancestral waters. From a young age I carried within me a peculiar strength. My hands could both heal and cause disease. It was a gift that haunted me, for I did not understand its dual nature. I vividly remember the day everything changed. I was only 7 years old when the first wounds appeared on my skin, small blisters that burned like embers, spreading across my body as if they were seeds of pain planted by the Orixas themselves. My mother, Nana, tried to hide her concern, but I saw the fear in her ancient eyes. "My son," she whispered as she ran her cool hands over my wounds, "you carry within you the power of renewal. Every pain you feel now will be transformed into wisdom." But her words, as loving as they were, did not ease the suffering growing within me. It wasn't just the physical pain of the multiplying sores. It was the emotional pain of watching people turn away from me, whispering among themselves that I was cursed, that my very presence could contaminate the earth. The other young Orixas played freely in the fields of Ife, while I hid in the shadows, watching their laughter and games with a heart that broke a little more each day. Sango, with his strength and majesty, commanded storms and was admired by all. Oxum danced through the rivers with a grace that enchanted anyone who saw her. And I was the one everyone feared. That's when I met Ifa, the Orisha of wisdom and destinies. He found me on a particularly difficult afternoon, hiding in a cave, weeping over my wounds that seemed never to heal. "Obaluayê," his voice echoed through the cave with a serenity that calmed my restless spirit. "Do you know why you bear these marks?" I lifted my tear-swollen eyes. "Because I'm cursed? Because the Orixas punished me for some sin I don't remember committing?" Ifa approached, his eyes shining with a light that seemed to contain all the stars of the universe. "No, my young one. You bear these marks because you were chosen to understand human pain in a way no other Orixa can. Your wounds are your greatest gift, for through them you will learn to heal not only the body but also the soul." His words planted a small seed of hope in my wounded heart, but I still couldn't fully comprehend. How could my sores, the source of so much suffering, be a gift? "Come with me," Ifa continued, extending his hand. "There is much you need to learn about your destiny." In the days that followed, Ifa taught me about medicinal herbs, about the secrets of healing hidden in the earth. He showed me how each plant held its own wisdom, how each root contained mysteries that could alleviate different kinds of pain. But more importantly, he taught me about humility. "True healing," he said as we prepared a potion to soothe my wounds, "does not come from arrogance or displays of power. It comes from a deep understanding of suffering and genuine compassion for those who suffer." Gradually, I began to realize that my wounds were not just physical. They were mirrors of the wounds that dwelled in the hearts of all beings. Each sore on my skin connected me to universal pain, giving me the ability to feel others' suffering as if it were my own. But the world outside remained cruel. When I tried to approach villages to offer my help, people fled in terror. Children cried at the sight of me. Women hid their children. Men took up arms as if I were a mortal threat. That's when I made the decision that would forever change my existence. If my appearance caused so much fear, I would hide it. I sought out the softest straw I could find and began weaving a cloak to cover my entire body. Each strand of straw I wove was like a prayer, a plea to the Orixas to give me the strength to endure the isolation I was creating for myself. The cloak was finished on a morning of light rain. When I wore it for the first time, I felt a strange sense of protection, but also of imprisonment. I was hiding from the world, but I was also shielding myself from constant rejection. Covered in straw, I began wandering through distant villages, always keeping a safe distance. I observed the people, studied their illnesses, memorized their sufferings. Little by little, I noticed patterns. Certain times of the year when fevers intensified, moments when crops failed and malnutrition spread. My heart broke seeing so much suffering I could alleviate, But my fear of rejection was greater than my desire to help. I lived in constant inner conflict. The gift of healing pulsed in my veins, but my wounded soul prevented me from using it fully. For months, I wandered through African lands, observing and learning. I saw children die from diseases I could cure with a simple touch, saw elders waste away from ailments my herbs could remedy. Each death I could have prevented was like a new wound in my already battered soul. One night, while camping near a village, I heard the wails of a mother who had lost her child to a terrible fever. Her cries of pain pierced through my straw cloak and touched the deepest part of my being. In that moment, I understood that my own pain, however intense, did not give me the right to ignore the suffering of others. I rose slowly, my straw-covered body trembling not from the cold of the night, but from the intensity of the decision I was making. I could no longer live in hiding, not when there was so much suffering I could ease, even if it meant facing rejection again, even if it meant revealing my wounds to the world. I walked slowly toward the village, each step a struggle against my own fears. The straw cloak that covered me seemed to weigh tons, but I knew it was not just a shield to protect me from the world. It was also a barrier preventing me from fulfilling my true purpose. The first houses of the village appeared before me, illuminated by the full moon shining in the sky like an ancestral eye watching my journey. I smelled medicinal herbs burning, a sign that the village healers were trying to combat some disease. My heart raced. Perhaps the time had come to finally use my gifts without fear. But as I approached, the same familiar voices began whispering in my mind. What if they reject you again? What if they drive you out? What if they see your wounds and deem you impure? The familiar fear began to settle in my chest, threatening to make me retreat once more. Then I heard the grieving mother's wails again, now joined by other moans of pain coming from different houses. An epidemic had taken hold of the village, and I could feel the despair in the air like a thick, suffocating fog. I took a deep breath, feeling the air pass through the straw covering my face. This was my chance to prove, not to others, but to myself, that my wounds were not a curse, but a bridge to understand and heal the pain of others. I grabbed my bag of medicinal herbs and headed toward the village entrance, my heart beating like an ancestral drum announcing my arrival. I didn't yet know that this was only the first step of a journey that would teach me the true meaning of healing and humility. Dear listeners, this is only the first part of my story. If you wish to know how I faced my fears and discovered the true power hidden behind wounds, stay with me on this journey of self-discovery and transformation. There is much more to reveal about how humility can be our greatest strength. The first person to see me approach the village was a child. She was playing alone near a well, her parents likely tending to a sick person inside. When her eyes met my straw-covered figure, she didn't scream or run. She simply tilted her head with childlike curiosity. "Who are you, straw man?" her sweet voice asked, free of the fear I was accustomed to provoking. I knelt slowly, trying to appear less threatening. "I'm someone who came to help," I replied, my voice muffled by the cloak. "Are there sick people in your village?" She nodded sadly. "My grandmother is very sick. She can't get up anymore, and her skin is hot like fire. Mommy cries a lot." My heart tightened. Through the straw, I could smell the disease permeating the village air. It was a plague I knew well, a fever that struck the weakest first, spreading quickly if not treated properly. "Can I see your grandmother?" I asked gently. The girl led me through the narrow village streets. As we walked, other people began appearing at their doorways, watching my strange figure with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Some whispered among themselves, others hid as I passed, but no one tried to drive me away. The girl's house was simple, made of mud and wood, with a straw roof that sadly reminded me of my own cloak. When we entered, I was immediately struck by the strong smell of sickness and suffering. A young woman, surely the child's mother, knelt beside a bed where an elderly woman lay delirious with fever. "Mommy," the girl called softly. "I brought someone who says he can help Grandma." The woman raised her red, tear-stained eyes and looked at me with a mix of despair and hope. "Who are you? Are you a healer?" I hesitated for a moment. How could I explain who I was without revealing my true identity? "I'm someone who knows herbs and the secrets of healing," I finally answered. "I can try to help your mother." I approached the bed where the elderly woman lay. Even through the straw, I could feel the heat of her fever radiating from her body. Her breaths were quick and shallow, her skin dehydrated and yellowish. I immediately recognized the symptoms. It was the same disease that had ravaged other villages I'd visited on my wanderings. "I need fresh water, honey, if you have it, and permission to touch your mother," I said to the woman. She nodded desperately. "Do whatever it takes. She's all I have left of my family." I placed my straw-covered hands on the elderly woman's forehead and closed my eyes. Instantly, I felt the energy of the disease pulsing through her like a river of fire. But alongside the illness, I sensed something else. The life force still fighting within her fragile body, a small but persistent flame of survival. I focused, channeling the healing energy flowing through me. I felt the heat of my own wounds mingling with the woman's fever, and for a moment, it was as if our pains fused into a single experience of suffering and healing. Slowly, the woman's breathing began to normalize. The excessive heat of her skin gradually subsided, and she stopped writhing restlessly in bed. After a few minutes, she opened her eyes for the first time in days. "Water," she whispered in a hoarse voice. Her daughter ran to fetch water, tears of joy streaming down her face. The granddaughter jumped with delight, clapping her hands. "Grandma's better." The straw man healed Grandma. A deep wave of satisfaction coursed through me. How long had it been since I'd felt the joy of using my gifts for good? How long since I'd seen grateful smiles instead of fearful expressions? But my work wasn't done. I could sense the presence of the disease in other houses in the village, spreading like a malevolent shadow. I prepared a mixture of herbs for the elderly woman and left detailed instructions on how to care for her. "The illness could return if she doesn't rest properly," I warned. "Keep her hydrated and give her this mixture 3 times a day." As I prepared to leave, the woman grabbed my straw-covered hand. "How can I thank you? You saved my mother." "Don't thank me," I replied, my throat tight. "Just take good care of her." I left the house with a lighter heart than I'd felt in years. But as I walked through the village streets, I began to realize the true extent of the epidemic. Almost every house had someone sick. Children cried in pain, adults delirious with fever, elders languished in their beds. Word of my healing spread quickly. Soon a small crowd followed me through the streets, begging for help. Men pleaded for me to save their wives. Mothers implored me to heal their children. Children tugged at my straw, asking me to make their parents feel better. For a moment, I felt overwhelmed. So many people were suffering, so many pains to heal. I began to doubt whether I truly had the strength to help everyone. My own wounds seemed to pulse more intensely, reminding me of my own fragility. Then I remembered Aoife's words. True healing comes from a deep understanding of suffering and genuine compassion for those who suffer. It wasn't about having enough strength to heal everyone at once. It was about being present for each person, one at a time, with complete dedication and love. For the next 3 days, I went from house to house, healing the sick and teaching the healthy how to prepare preventive remedies. With each person I healed, I felt a deep connection, as if their pains became mine and my healings became theirs. I discovered that every sick person had a unique story, a specific pain that went beyond physical symptoms. There was the merchant who felt guilty for bringing the disease from another village, the midwife who feared she could no longer help pregnant women, the blacksmith who worried about his family's livelihood while he was ill. With each one, I not only healed the body, but also offered words of comfort and understanding. I found that my own experience with suffering allowed me to understand their pains in a way other healers could not. On the 4th day, when I visited the house of the elderly woman I'd healed first, I found her sitting in the courtyard, playing with her granddaughter. She saw me approach and stood with a radiant smile. "My savior," she said, coming closer. "How can I repay your kindness?" Before I could answer, she gently touched my straw cloak. "I know you hide for a reason," she whispered, "but I want you to know that it doesn't matter what's beneath this straw. You have the purest heart I've ever known." Her words touched me deeply. For the first time in years, someone had looked beyond my appearance, beyond my wounds, and seen my true essence. I felt tears well in my eyes, wetting the straw covering my face. "Grandma," the girl interrupted, "can I ask the straw man's name?" I looked at that innocent child, the first to accept me without fear, and made a decision that would change everything. "My name is Obaluayê," I answered, my voice thick with emotion. "I am the Orisha of healing and transformation." The elderly woman nodded wisely, as if she already knew. "I felt a special energy in you. Thank you for honoring us with your presence, great Orisha." In the days that followed, my identity spread through the village, but contrary to what I feared, there was no rejection. The people revered me not out of fear, but out of gratitude. They had seen my compassion in action, felt my genuine dedication to their well-being. Children ran to greet me as I passed through the streets. Adults offered me their best meals. Elders sought me not only for physical healing, but for life advice. For the first time, I felt truly accepted and loved. But it was during this time of happiness that I received news that would test everything I had learned. A messenger arrived at the village with information about a terrible plague devastating the neighboring lands, a disease far more virulent and deadly than anything I had ever faced. "They say even the most powerful healers can't stop it," the messenger reported, his voice trembling with fear. "Entire villages are being wiped out. Survivors flee in panic, spreading the disease wherever they go." A chill ran down my spine. This was no ordinary illness. It was something that would demand all my strength and wisdom to combat. But worse, it was something that could test not only my healing powers, but also my humility and compassion. That night I stayed awake, contemplating what to do. I could stay in the village, protecting the people I had come to love, or I could face the unknown and try to save those I didn't yet know. My straw trembled in the night wind, as if it too was nervous about the decision I had to make. I remembered my mother Nana's words, "You carry within you the power of renewal." Perhaps the time had come to discover the true meaning of that prophecy. You who follow me on this journey, can you imagine the weight of that decision? Leaving the safety of a place where I was finally accepted to face the unknown required a courage I wasn't sure I possessed. But something in my heart told me that my true test was yet to come. Stay with me, for what happened next changed forever my understanding of what it means to be a true healer. At dawn, my decision was made. I could not ignore the suffering spreading through the neighboring lands, not when I knew I might be their only hope. I gathered my belongings and prepared to leave, but first, I wanted to say goodbye to the village that had taught me the true meaning of acceptance. The elderly woman who was my first healing was waiting for me at the village entrance, as if she knew this moment would come. By her side, her daughter and granddaughter watched me with tear-filled eyes. "You're going to face the great plague, aren't you?" the elderly woman asked with her characteristic wisdom. I nodded silently. "I can't stay here in safety while so many suffer. It would betray everything I've learned about compassion." The girl ran to me and hugged my straw-covered waist. "Will you come back, straw man? Will you come back to us?" I knelt and gently touched her face. "If the Orixas allow it, I will return. But even if I don't, always remember that the love and compassion we shared will never die." The journey to the lands ravaged by the plague took 7 days. With each step, the landscape around me grew more desolate. Fields that should have been lush were dry and abandoned. Entire villages had been left behind, their houses echoing with the silence of death. On the 5th day, I encountered the first refugees. They were groups of emaciated people, fleeing the infected area with their few belongings on their backs. When they saw me approach, many backed away in fear. But some, the most desperate, came forward, begging for help. "Please," a woman pleaded, holding a feverish child in her arms. "My son is dying. Can you do something?" I took the child in my arms and immediately felt the gravity of the situation. This was not the same disease I had healed in the previous village. It was something far deeper, something that attacked not only the body but also the spirit. The child was being consumed by a darkness I had never faced before. I closed my eyes and focused all my healing energy, but for the first time in a long while, I felt resistance. The disease fought against my healing as if it were a conscious entity, determined not to let its prey escape. I sweated coldly beneath my straw cloak. My own wounds began to throb with intense pain, as if they were being attacked by the same force consuming the child. For a terrible moment, I thought I would fail. Then I remembered Ifa's words about humility. I stopped trying to force the healing and instead opened myself completely to the child's suffering. I let his pain become my pain, his fear become my fear, and in that moment of total vulnerability, something extraordinary happened. I felt the presence of all those I had healed before, the elderly woman, her family, all the villagers I had helped. It was as if their energies of gratitude and love were flowing through me, strengthening my ability to heal. I was no longer alone in this fight. Slowly, the darkness within the child began to recede. His breathing stabilized, his fever subsided, and he opened his eyes for the first time in days. The mother wept with relief, embracing both me and her son. But healing that child had cost me dearly. I felt as if part of my own life force had been drained. My wounds beneath the straw burned like never before, and for a moment I faltered. "Are you okay?" the woman asked, noticing my weakness. "I'm fine," I lied, trying to hide my condition. "Take care of the child. He still needs rest." I continued my journey, but with each refugee I met and healed, more of my strength was drained. The plague was ravenous, consuming not only its victims but also those who tried to fight it. I began to understand why other healers had failed. On the 7th day, I finally reached the epicenter of the devastation. It was a great city that must once have been prosperous, but now it was shrouded in a sickly fog. The smell of death and despair was overwhelming, even filtered through my straw. The streets were deserted, except for the bodies of those who had succumbed to the plague. Windows and doors were sealed, with survivors hiding in their homes, awaiting death or a miracle. I walked through the silent streets, my heart breaking with each step. How could one person face such devastation? How could my limited strength make a difference in the face of such a scale of suffering? Then I heard a faint voice calling for help. Following the sound, I found an old man lying in an alley, clearly in the final stages of the disease. His eyes were glassy, his breathing irregular, and I could sense he had only hours left to live. I knelt beside him. "I can try to help you," I offered, though I knew my strength was nearly depleted. He looked at me through his haze of pain and whispered, "No, don't waste your strength on me, young healer. I'm old and have lived my life. Use your energy to save the younger ones, the children who still have a future ahead." His words touched me deeply. Even in his final moments, he was thinking of others. "What is your name?" I asked. "Obaluayê," he replied with difficulty. "I was a healer in this city for 50 years, until this plague came and defeated us all." My eyes filled with tears. Here was a man who had dedicated his entire life to healing, just like me, and now he was dying alone in an alley. "Obaluayê," I said firmly. "A healer never abandons another healer." Ignoring his protests, I placed my hands on him and channeled what remained of my energy. I felt my own life force diminish drastically, my wounds opening beneath the straw, my vision beginning to darken. But something miraculous happened. As I emptied myself of energy, I felt again the presence of those I had healed before. Not just the elderly woman and her family, but all the people who had benefited from my compassion over the years. It was as if every act of healing I had performed had created an eternal connection, a network of love and gratitude that now sustained me. Obaluayê recovered slowly, his eyes regaining the spark of life. When he sat up, fully healed, he looked at me with an expression of awe and reverence. You are Obaluayê, aren't you?" he whispered. "I feel your ancestral energy." I had no strength left to answer. I had given all my energy to save him, and now I was on the brink of death. My vision was dark, my breathing shallow, and I could feel my own life force slipping away. "My young Orisha," Obaluayê said, holding my trembling hand, "you gave your life to save mine, but there is one thing you have not yet learned about true healing." Through the fog of my fading consciousness, I managed to murmur, What is it?" "True healing does not come from giving all your energy to others," he explained gently. "It comes from teaching others to heal themselves and each other. You've been so focused on carrying the world's pain alone that you forgot the most powerful healing is the one that multiplies through community." His words pierced through my weakness like a divine revelation. I had spent so much time hidden behind my straw, taking on the full responsibility of healing alone, that I had lost sight of the true lesson I needed to learn. "Help me," I whispered to Obaluayê. "Teach me how to truly heal." In the days that followed, as I slowly recovered, Obaluayê taught me about communal healing. Together, we began gathering the city's survivors, not just to heal them, but to teach them to be healers for one another. I discovered that my straw, which I had always seen as a protective shield, had become a barrier preventing me from forming true connections. When I finally had the courage to remove it in front of the survivors, revealing my wounds to all, something extraordinary happened. Instead of recoiling in horror, the people drew closer. They saw that my scars were not signs of weakness or a curse, but evidence that I had survived, overcome, and transformed my pain into wisdom. My wounds became symbols of hope for all those who also carried their own scars. A young woman with burn scars on her face approached and gently touched one of my scars. "If you can be strong with your marks," she said, "then I can be strong with mine too." A man who had lost an arm to the plague said, "Your wounds didn't make you less capable of healing. Maybe my limitations don't make me less capable of helping others either." I realized that my true strength lay not in hiding my vulnerabilities, but in embracing them and using them as bridges to connect with others' pain. My scars became not only symbols of my past suffering, but also of my capacity for healing and renewal. Working together, the community of survivors managed not only to eradicate the plague, but also to create a sustainable healing system where everyone cared for one another. I taught them about medicinal herbs, but they taught me about the healing that comes from community, mutual support, and unconditional acceptance. When the time came to leave, the entire city gathered to bid me farewell. But this time, I wasn't leaving as the solitary healer covered in straw. I was leaving as Obaluayê, the Orisha who had learned that true humility lies not in hiding, but in showing one's vulnerabilities so others can see they too can overcome theirs. I returned to my original village, but not as the same Orisha who had left. The elderly woman who was my first healing greeted me with a radiant smile. "Did you find what you were looking for?" she asked wisely. "I found something even greater," I replied. "I learned that healing isn't about being perfect or strong enough to save everyone alone. It's about having the humility to show your wounds, teach others to heal, and create communities where everyone cares for each other." The girl, now a little older, ran to me. "You're not wearing your straw anymore," she exclaimed with joy. I smiled, feeling the wind touch my scarred skin directly. "I don't need to hide anymore. My scars are part of who I am, and they help me connect with others who also bear their own marks." Since then, my mission has completely changed. I'm no longer the solitary healer carrying the world's pain on his shoulders. I am Obaluayê, the Orisha who teaches that true strength comes from shared vulnerability, that the most powerful healing is the one that multiplies through community, and that the deepest humility lies in having the courage to show who we truly are. My wounds are still here, and they always will be. They are constant reminders of my journey, symbols of my ability to transform pain into wisdom. But now they are also bridges connecting me to all those who need to know that it is possible to heal, grow, and find purpose even in the midst of suffering. This is my story, dear listeners. The story of how I learned that true healing does not come from perfection, but from the acceptance of our imperfections. That strength does not lie in carrying everything alone, but in teaching others to carry each other. And that the deepest humility is in having the courage to be vulnerable, to show our scars, and to trust that our authenticity can be the key to others' healing. If this journey has touched your heart, if these words have resonated with your own wounds and hopes, I invite you to reflect on your own scars. What marks do you carry that could become bridges to help others? What vulnerabilities do you hide that could become sources of strength and connection? Remember, you don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You don't need to be fully healed to help others on their healing journey. Sometimes, it is precisely in our wounds that we find our greatest capacity to understand and transform the world around us. May my story inspire you to embrace your own healing journey, to find strength in your vulnerability, and to discover that true humility can be the most powerful shield you will ever wear. Aksay, my brothers and sisters, may the strength of the earth and the wisdom of transformation be with you always.